Welcome to a brief inquiry into Resident Evil 9. I just beat the game and I really enjoyed it and I really want to talk about it, so that's what we're going to be doing today. I do have a couple things I want to say before we get into the first part of the video. First off, spoilers, I will be showing gameplay of the ending and I will be talking about the ending and just my feelings on it towards the end of the video, so I would highly recommend, if you do not want to be spoiled, playing the game or watching somebody play the game and actually seeing like the full-on gameplay rather than a watered-down explanation of it. Second off, a couple things that kind of, I guess, matter, but you probably don't care about. I beat the game in about 8 hours and 15 minutes, and I played on standard classic difficulty. The only thing that changes from standard modern to standard classic is Grace's parts do not have an autosave and you need ink ribbons on the classic difficulty. I highly recommend, if you know anything about Resident Evil, just going ahead and playing on the classic difficulty, because the enemies weren't really a challenge. I think the game was pretty easy even on the classic difficulty, and saving is never an issue. You never run out of ink ribbons. You never have a problem with saving. I saved almost 30 times with Grace, and I still had ink ribbon cartridges still left over. So I feel like if you know anything about Resident Evil, there's literally no point to play on the modern difficulty. But speaking of Grace, let's get right into the first part, which is talking about Grace's gameplay and Grace's story. I forgot to mention in the intro that I played Grace in first person and Leon in third. I feel like that's the way Capcom intended it to be, so I just did what the default was, which was those settings. But getting into Grace as a character, I do think Grace as a character was phenomenal. I think the sheer fear that she has throughout the game is something that we haven't really seen from a Resident Evil character. Like, a lot of Resident Evil characters have already seen this stuff and they're stone cold, kind of like how Leon is. Or Ethan is a great example of, he's just silent, like he doesn't really say anything even though all this crazy shit's going on. It's really cool to see Grace be terrified of everything and be heavily breathing when something comes by, when she's hiding, because she's like scared. It definitely adds a sense of realism to that. Obviously none of it's real, but it immerses you a little bit more when she gets, like, you know, worked up about something. But going into her gameplay was also great. It was very, because I played it in first person, very Resident Evil 7-esque. I think that that's the best comparison to it. There's really no other comparison. If you played it in third person, it might have not felt as much like Resident Evil 7 and maybe felt more like the original games, which 7 is very original style minus the first person. So it's classic Resident Evil. I do like the antique coins. I think being able to collect those, you were able to actually, if you have leftover antique coins, you were able to turn them into scrap with a crafting recipe. I never actually got it, so that's something when I go back and replay the game I have to get. But going into the gameplay, I realized something as I was playing it, that all the remakes that Capcom has made, and 7 and 8 included into this, have all made a lot of sense. It was all calculated of what games they remade. Because you look back at 2 and 3, that's Raccoon City. It's all about Raccoon City, which is very prominent in 9. Then you go to the remake of 4, which Leon's gameplay is just a continuation and a successor to who Leon is in 9. It's him in 4 on steroids. And then you look at 7 and 8, and it has the first person aspect in 7 and kind of all the combat and stuff like that. And, you know, you have the not mystery box, I was going to call it the mystery box. You have the supply box. I don't know why I can't think of the name of it. But it really brought back that classic feel. And then 8 expanded onto that with Rose DLC came out. I don't even remember what it was called. But you could switch between first and third person. So slowly through the last 10 years, they have built this game where it almost feels like it's everything that they've done with the next gen Resident Evil games in one, and it's beautiful. I loved it. I loved Grace as a character. I loved her gameplay. I do think it was a little too long at times. Like when you before you escape with Emily from not the facility, but the kind of hospital or whatever you want to call it. I felt like there were just a lot of parts of that where it was just like ridiculous. Like I wanted it to be over. And it wasn't because it was bad, but it did seem a little dragged out with her. And especially when you're trying to sneak around everywhere, because that's how I chose to play it. I chose to kind of just sneak and try to lay low and I tried killing the least amount of zombies as possible because I didn't really have ammo, and I also knew that if I engaged in too much combat that I would take more damage, which caused me to have to potentially either restart more or save more. And since I did play it in Classic, I didn't know at the time how easy getting ink ribbons were, so I was being very conservative with everything, which I probably could have engaged in more combat, but it is what it is. You don't really fight any bosses with Grace, if I remember correctly. Like, I don't remember actually fighting anybody tough. The toughest enemies you'll get are like the two singer ladies that are somewhere in there and the chef, who I actually did not fight. I just always ran around him. I If I go back and play it, which I will go back and play it, I will actually kill him as Grace because it is an achievement to get that, and I'm gonna try to 100% the game. The next time I play it, I'm gonna play it on the Insanity run, so we'll see how that goes. And to add on to her as a character, I'll go back to that. Grace, obviously, she was scared throughout the whole game. I've already established that. But Grace grew confidence, and Leon, which I've seen this a lot, and you could tell throughout some parts of the game, is she acted like a young Leon, and Leon picked up on that. And that was the thing that Leon, there was a part where it was at the end of the game and Leon's already infected, and Grace is like, I'll do whatever it takes, yada yada yada. And Leon verbatim said that basically the same thing to Ada in Resident Evil 2. And you could tell by the look on Leon's face that he had played this game before. He was now Ada and Grace was now Leon. Not in a romantic way, but in a sense of, experienced and inexperienced. And I think that that was a very cool dynamic that they had, that Leon was like, the stoic, like tough one, and Grace was scared and inexperienced and was still brave, but like confidence, especially at the end when she gets to Leon and Leon's just laying, like, slumped up against the wall, and she carries Leon out. It's like she still had courage even though she was scared. And I think that that was what made it cool with her character, is that even with all of that, she was still a hero. Leon is more badass than ever. He's bigger than ever. He's stronger than ever. But he has one issue, and he is infected with the T virus. We find that out basically right as the game starts, and he's combating it for the whole game. He visibly gets sicker and sicker, and there is seemingly no cure. Where biggest plot twist of the game, I'll drop it now. The Elpis that Dr. Gideon and Xeno and all of the basically enemies of the game are looking for is this thing called Elpis, and they believe Elpis is like this super high powerful like bioweapon and they think Grace is the key. They think Grace has special powers and she knows what the password is, and she doesn't. And that's why she gets kidnapped at the beginning of the game, and why they take her to Raccoon City, and the reason why Leon goes back because he tries to save her. And come to find out, Spencer, who basically created Umbrella, did everything. He felt horrible for releasing the T virus onto the United States. And so what he wanted to do was create hope. That was the big word that was used. That was actually the password to release Elpis, was hope. He wanted to create an antiviral for the T virus. And so that's how Leon gets cured, is that the canon ending, because there's two different endings, you have to unlock Elpis and you cure Leon, and then he's fine, because Leon's like on the verge of death. Like, he is like very close to dying. I'll start with Leon as a character. He's very stoic in this game. He's not really fazed by anything until you get to Raccoon City, specifically RPD, which is what I was kind of saying earlier with, you know, Resident Evil 2 being remade. Is it makes a lot more sense now, because there's flashbacks from Resident Evil 2. You specifically got one with Marvin, who was the cop who got bit and turned into a zombie. He has another flashback with the guy in the gun store. I can't remember his name, but his wife got taken by the zombies, his daughter got bit, and he kills his daughter, and I think he might kill himself too. I don't remember. But Leon has this very like emotional connection to Raccoon City, obviously, and you could tell just by the way he acts that he feels like these people dying, like Marvin and the guy and his daughter, all of them could have been saved, and he felt like he could have saved them, and he felt like he kind of ruined his reputation, not reputation, but ruined his status as a cop because he failed at being a cop. Obviously, he shouldn't feel that way, because nobody intended on a pharmaceutical virus being released on a city and all of this government voodoo going on, but I can see why he feels that way. It's just really cool to see him return to where it all started, and seeing how for the last almost 30 years how much this has affected him as a person, and how much he still thinks about it, even though it was thought to be over, even though it obviously wasn't. His gameplay, though, I did mention it before. Leon's gameplay is wonderful. Once you get to Leon's like full on, like, you're in Raccoon City and you're playing as him like full time basically, it is off the walls. It is just action packed. It's beautiful. He has a hatchet instead of like a combat knife. He has crazy finishing moves. I had every gun that they gave me. I had an SMG, I had a rifle, I had a shotgun, pistol. I used the Silence 9. I used the TAC shotgun. I don't remember what sniper I used, but I got a new sniper. The SMG, I got rid of the Gal. It was whichever one was the other one. But I upgraded my guns fully, and I got rid of actually all of my starting guns, or like any of the guns that you had as Leon at the beginning, and obviously the Requiem after a certain point. But one thing I will say about Leon's part isn't a complaint, but something that I guess is kind of a complaint, that getting points were seemingly way too easy, that I was able to buy whatever I wanted. Like, I was able to buy whatever gun, because you kill, like, every zombie you killed was at least 500 points. So you go and kill 20 zombies and you have 10,000 points. And upgrades were like, they were anywhere from 2 to 7,000 points, but you got points so easily that it didn't really matter. Like it wasn't a matter of if you could buy an upgrade, it was a matter of when. And me playing like, 8 and the original 4 and playing the remake of 4, points were never really that easy, but I don't think it was like I think Leon's parts weren't a matter of points, it was a matter of the fun and the action of it. I'm glad Leon's story did not end how I thought it would be, which actually, when I played it, I picked the right option of not destroying Elpis, which I will say, quick tidbit, if you didn't pick up that you're not supposed to destroy Elpis, I'm not trying to sound like Napoleon here, but I thought it was pretty clear from what you literally just watched as Grace in the video of um her mother and Spencer talking about hope, hope, hope. I thought it was pretty self-explanatory, and I used the context clues to pick up like, oh, this might actually not be what they think it is, which, not to sound like Billy Badass or anything, but I don't know how more people didn't pick up on that before, because I feel like a lot of people were like shocked with the twist of it not being like a crazy like bioweapon. But regardless of the fact, I'm getting sidetracked. Leon is a character in the game. It was cool to see not the soft side of him, but the side that never forgets what happened in Raccoon City, and see him kind of see his younger self in another character of like it's a full circle moment of history always repeats itself. It was a good way for Leon's story to progress, and I'm hoping, he's still gonna be there later down the line, whether whatever they do with Resident Evil, that hopefully his character's still prominent. Obviously, with him getting up there in age, because he's now gonna be 50 here pretty soon. I'm dragging this out so long. Leon's part was perfect. That I'll just say that his part was perfect. So that about does it. I know that it wasn't very in depth. I wasn't really talking about much. I was more just talking about everything at once and trying to like I didn't write a script for this or anything. I just really wanted to talk about both their sections because the game was sectioned off into like two halves. I really like Resident Evil. I've been a fan of the games more than half my life. I enjoyed the game. I thought it was perfect. I thought, like I said earlier in Grace's part, that I think that it just took everything that they've done since kind of the revival of Resident Evil and just mashed it all into one game. And if I had to rate it on a scale, I'd probably give it a 9.5. There's something that screams it's not a perfect game, but it's so close to being perfect. And I do think that it is just like very minor things of like I feel like it was too easy on the standard difficulty. Like I feel like no other Resident Evil has ever been really that easy. I feel like I've had challenges with things where in this game, like, I would die in a section maybe once, twice, and then I was able to just breeze past it because I was like, oh, now I understand it. Where there were parts of other Resident Evils where I felt like, you really got stuck on something for a while until it clicked of like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. And there weren't really any like crazy puzzles or anything. Like there was something missing, I guess, but it was perfect as a story. It was perfect as especially Leon's gameplay was perfect. The only complaint I have about that is that it was slightly too easy to upgrade everything. I really don't have any complaints about it. I love it, and like I said, I know this wasn't a very in-depth analysis of the game, but I wanted to just put my 2 cents in to each kind of character and what I liked about them and the very few things I didn't like about them. But if you haven't played the game and you're still watching this, I would highly recommend like actually going and either getting the game or watching somebody play it and like I said, seeing the game for yourself. Don't just listen to me yap about it and try to understand it because the game is phenomenal. If you haven't played or seen 2, go please play that, because 2 out of everything, like, you should know the story, but 2 is like called back to a lot where you kind of have to understand what's going on in 2. With all that considered, if you enjoyed this not very deep analysis of Resident Evil 9, Resident Evil Requiem, whatever you want to call it, give it a like, give it a sub, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.